opening a public testimony on simultaneous bills. Senate Bill 566 and Senate Bill 1038. Mr. Ransom, can you give us an overview of both of these bills?
Yes, Chair Manning and Vice Chair Thatcher and members of the committee. Senate Bill 566 exempts the portion of Oregon within the Pacific time zone from daylight savings time if the states of California and Washington also adopt this exemption. If this exemption does not become active by March 1st, 2035, the exemption is repealed. Time standards in the portion of Oregon within the Mountain Time Zone would remain unchanged. And then Senate Bill 1038 establishes the standard of time throughout Oregon to match U.S. code, including the use of daylight savings time, except as follows. If the states of California and Washington adopt year-round standard time, then year-round standard time would apply to the Pacific time zone portion of Oregon. Or if the United States Congress allows year-round daylight savings time and California and Washington adopt this, then year-round daylight savings time would apply to the Pacific time zone portion of Oregon. Time standards for the portion of Oregon in the Mountain Time Zone would remain unchanged in either of the latter circumstances, and whichever standards are not adopted by December 31st, 2035 are repealed.
Thank you. Senator Anderson, if you please. And Senator Thatcher, do you want to kick this off, or you can do it from up here?
Let's let him go first.
All right. Senator, after you state your name, I would like to know if you're going to be commenting or testimony on one bill or both bills.
Both bills. Thank you, sir. And thank you, Chair Manning and Vice Chair and Committee. Appreciate the time this evening. For the record, my name is Dick Anderson. I'm a state senator, Senate District 5, which is primarily along the coast. I'm here today because I believe it is time to put an end to the practice of daylight savings time, and Senate Bill 566 will do so by allowing for permanent standard time in Oregon. Who in this room hasn't changed their clocks back since November? Good news, on Sunday,
This week.
You'll be accurate again. The bad news is that you will lose an hour of sleep, and for the next few weeks be playing catch up until your body is adjusted to the time once again. This is a twice yearly task that everyone despises. Every year, millions of people are forced to adjust to this disruption caused by the time change. Studies have shown that this can lead to a range of health issues, including increased risk of heart attacks, stroke, and sleep disorders. Originally, daylight savings was implemented to save energy by shifting daylight hours, but studies have shown that the energy savings are negligible in the modern world. In fact, the disruptions caused by the time change often outweigh any benefits. The time change disrupts our daily routines, makes it harder for people to adjust to a new work schedules, leading to decreased productivity. Families also struggle with these changes, particularly in the weeks following the time shift. A growing body of research has shown that regions and countries that have abolished daylight savings time, such as Arizona and Hawaii, have seen positive results. In fact, people in these states seem extremely happy. Arizona has border states as well, one of those being California, which also borders Oregon, and they do just fine. If we are the leader, I believe the rest will follow or fall like dominoes around this archaic tradition. I believe that permanently adopting standard time or daylight savings time year-round will provide for a consistent and healthier lifestyle for everyone. I urge you to consider the health, economic, social benefits of eliminating daylight savings time. Let us move forward with a solution that makes sense for the well-being of everyone in our state. This will be our third attempt at trying to get rid of daylight savings time in Oregon. If there's one thing I would like to accomplish while in this office, it is to not have to change my clock twice a year. I hope you will agree, and thank you for your time.
Questions for the senator? Thank you, Senator.
Thank you,
Senator
Senator.
Thatcher.
Okay, do I have to put my name on the record up here? It's
Yeah.
just weird to me. Okay, right. Senator Thatcher, District 11. And I have had for years people writing to me, constituents and people from all over the state, saying, let's get rid of the changing of the clocks twice a year. So back in 2019, well, before that, I won't go into all the history, but in 2019, I introduced a bill that passed both chambers to keep us in daylight savings time year-round. And the point was, at the time, is that if Washington, which also passed a similar bill to Oregon, and we thought California would also be a slam dunk because their people voted for it overwhelmingly, but in that state, they rely on their legislature to codify any referendums, or, whatever, I don't know what they call them. They're not ballot measures, they call them something. Propositions, thank you. And so their legislature has not acted, and in fact, has backed away from the daylight savings time and is gearing more towards standard time. So, and the other catch with the daylight savings time, we were going to apply to, as a Pacific region of states, Washington, Oregon, and California, go to the Department of Transportation and, as a block of states, ask for permission to switch to permanent daylight savings time. So that bill, it was Senate Bill 320, it was dependent on two things happening. But, Oregon, Washington, California passing legislation that was similar, and then petitioning the federal government together and give more weight, or the Congress would give permission for states generally. And so none of those things have happened yet. So in fact, back in 1974, Congress did pass a law making daylight savings time permanent, and they were going to make it that way for 2 years. The law went into effect on January 6th in the middle of winter, and it became very, very, very unpopular very, very quickly. People did not like getting up in the freezing cold and the very dark, and they didn't like going to work in the dark. So during the winter, sending kids to school and to walk in the dark streets or wait for the buses in the dark quickly became an issue. And even though it was supposed to last for 2 years, Congress repealed it after 10 months. So that was the end of that. So that was our experience with permanent daylight savings time here in the United States. And in Oregon, the sun would rise at 9 in the winter. And even though it would be for a relatively short period of time, it turned out to be a very big negative for people, especially with parents of children, school-age children. And there were other issues having to do with religious rights as well. Former Senator Steiner had mentioned some of the prayers that happen around sunrise and sunset. And so that would cause an issue there. So fast forward to today, we did pass a bill off the Senate floor that's exactly like the language that's in Senate Bill 566. But parallel to that, because I was hearing that there's a lot of people still hoping that Congress will come through with a daylight savings time change, where 566 gets rid of the daylight savings time hope, I should say, 1038 would leave it in. I honestly don't think it'll go that way with Congress, but it leaves it there. And it leaves it there from here until 2035. And the thing is, with standard time, any old state can just decide to be on standard time. They don't have to wait for permission from the Department of Transportation or for Congress to change the law. We can just do it. And though my original bill, in 320 that passes, it said, let's just do it. This bill doesn't do that. It says only if Washington and California do it, then we'll go this way. And then on the 1038 bill, it says also, if Washington and California go towards daylight savings time and we have that permission to do so, we'll go that way. But like I said, I don't think it's the trend is going that way because the standard time is gaining favor. And the reason is because of our circadian rhythms, and the disruption is pretty serious. And ditching this particular switch to daylight would reduce accidents and promote better health. But we've all heard of the uptick of accidents and heart attacks, all these little things that happen in that period after daylight savings time. That's why switch to standard time would be more favored. And we wouldn't have to wait for the government. We could just say, once California and Washington decide to do that, then Oregon would join in. It's a very small change, and it really doesn't go nearly as far as I want. In fact, how many times have you heard, haven't we dealt with this issue? Didn't we deal with this like 5 years ago? And no, because we were waiting for permission from Congress for daylight savings time. And on the standard time, we can change it, but we're kind of chicken to do it by ourselves. So we're saying if Washington and California do it, we'll do it. And that's all that's in here. It allows for ditching of the switch. It's ditch the switch, but which ditch to switch, we don't know which. But it'll allow us both. And depending, kind of a little race, if you will. There's a lot of research, and I know some people that are more familiar with the medical effects to speak to that, but I wanted to preserve that hope that some people have that we would not give up on permanent daylight saving time. And though I think the trend is definitely going towards permanent standard time, they're both in the bill. And it allows it up to 10 years for this to happen within, up to 2035. And it keeps that part of Oregon that's in mountain time to stay in mountain time.
Okay. Questions for the Senator Meek?
Thank you, Senator Thatcher, for bringing this forward and having the conversation. I support both concepts, but a question about 1038, say in 5 years, Washington and California adopt and we move into standard time, but then the government, federal government approves us to go to daylight time, which one will we stay in?
Well, it still would depend on Washington and California going to daylight. Even if we did get that permission, it would be, we want us to be in sync with
Yes.
our Pacific Coast, neighbors to the north and south. And so that's still,
That'd be planned.
it would still be part of it.
Okay. Thank
Further
you.
questions of the Senator? Seeing none. We have to Senate Bill 566, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 people sign up to so why don't we do this? Remotely, we'll take our remote, well, it looks like the rest of them are remote, with the exception of 2 that are in person. And we have Jim Gorter. Is he? Please come forward, sir.
Yeah.
You would state your name for the record, sir, and please begin your testimony.
My name is Jim Gorter, and I live in Southwest Portland. And I'm speaking for myself and I think millions of other Oregonians today. But don't put my name on their lives. Thank you, Chair Manning, and thank you, members of the committee. I'd like to begin with a few comments on the pleasures and opportunities and advantages provided by daylight saving time. Enjoying a picnic supper while listening to a concert in the park. Having time to mow the lawn after work, knowing that it's probably going to rain on the weekend. Camping in August and not crawling into the tent at 7:30 when it gets dark. For seniors who no longer drive at night, going out to dinner or to visit friends in the evening. Going to the beach and dining at a fine coastal restaurant at the end of the day and not driving home in the dark. Looking out the window and seeing trees and streets and people. For many seniors who live alone, looking at a black window into darkness can be the loneliest of times. Spending an evening at the dog park or even kayaking on the river. Letting children play and socialize outside after supper instead of sitting inside looking at a small screen. Maybe just barbecuing on the deck with family and sipping a glass of wine. Yes, it can be a bit of a hassle to adjust to the change of the clock, but I don't despise it. But the Mayo Clinic says it takes just 1 to 1.5 days to adjust for 1 hour change of time. People do it voluntarily all the time, to catch an early flight, to go fishing, or celebrate New Year's Eve. Some people make changes frequently to accommodate jobs and family. This weekend, I'll make the adjustment by in half-hour increments over 2 nights. I've yet to meet anyone who said they wouldn't go to Hawaii because they'd have to change their watch. Or anyone who said they're going to spend the rest of their life in the Pacific time zone and not go east or west. My friend Ann used to talk about not burning daylight, meaning not wasting productive time when the sun is shining. If we were on standard time, the sun would rise before 5 a.m. on 129 days of the year in Portland. That's 4 months. We would certainly be burning daylight then. Please allow Oregonians to continue to enjoy those glorious summer evenings before the dark, rainy tunnel of winter closes in again. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions from the committee? Thank you, sir. Let me bring up Sarah. Sarah, and you are testifying on Senate Bill 1038, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Please put your name on the record and begin your testimony.
Good afternoon, Chair Manning, Vice Chair Thatcher, members of the committee. For the record, my name is Sarah Settimo, and I'm Chief of Staff for Senator Jeff Golden. Senator Golden is chairing his own committee right now and asked that I come and testify on his behalf to you all in support of SB 1038. First, I want to recognize the unlimited tenacity of Senator Thatcher, which over time moved me from general interest to solid support for the measure before you today. If there's an issue that's brought more individually written emails to my inbox over the years than standard versus daylight savings time, I wouldn't know what it is. We have a colleague on the House side of the building who kept 3 glass jars labeled permanent daylight savings time, permanent standard time, and keep things as they are. She invited visitors to put a bean in whichever jar they chose. I don't know what the final tally was, but she went through a lot of beans. I do think I know the thrust of opinion in Senate District 3, which straddles Interstate 5 down to the California border. While there was some passionate back and forth over which was the better kind of clock time, the 2 things I heard most often were 1, keep us the same as California because I crossed the state line for either business or pleasure all the time, and 2, I don't care as much about which you choose, but please choose one so that we don't have to go through this confusing ordeal twice a year. I asked Senator Thatcher to shape her bill to give folks what they've asked for. She has, and it's before you right now. I'm proud to support it, and I hope that you will as well. Thank you.
Okay. Questions for Sarah?
Thank you.
The rest of our support is going to be remote, so I think I'm going to finish up with Senate Bill 1038, and the last one I haven't signed up for 1038 is JP. Is JP, could you please state your name and begin your testimony, please?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Members of the committee, my name is Mr. JP. First name is spelled J-A-Y. Last name is spelled P-E-A. I'm the president of the registered nonprofit Safe Standard Time in Arizona. I'm also the co-chair for the Coalition for Permanent Standard Time, a group effort with 8 other nonprofits for health and safety. I'm here to ask for your yes vote on both Senate Bill 566 and Senate Bill 1038. Ditch the switch, lock the clock, as most voters want, in the quickest way because it's federally pre-approved, and in the safest, healthiest, and most lasting way per the lessons of history and science. Daylight saving time is simply a mandate to wake early and sleep less. When you turn your clock forward an hour this coming weekend, your alarm clock the next day and every day after will be sounding an hour earlier than it was on standard time. You'll be waking up in the dark again as if it's January. This forced early waking every morning deprives our sleep. And the science shows that we never actually adjust. On average, we're sleeping 19 minutes less every night that we're on daylight saving time. That deprivation of sleep costs hundreds of lives and millions of dollars every year. And permanent daylight time costs more, which is why it's federally prohibited. Nature makes the days longer in summer and shorter in winter, no matter what government does. Standard time, which is what these bills provide for, is the natural clock set to the sun where 12 p.m. is roughly high noon. It balances the morning and evening light fairly for all walks of life. And that morning light is especially important for school children, for commuters, for outdoor laborers, for service personnel, those who need the morning light for their sleep health, for their mood, for their safety, education, and productivity. This is the opinion of the American Academy of Sleep Medicine, the American Academy of Neurology, the National Safety Council, even Bloomberg Editorial Board. Arizona, Hawaii, the 5 U.S. territories, and most nations have observed permanent standard time for decades without incident. Mexico adopted it just a couple of years ago. More states now than ever have bills for permanent standard time instead of permanent daylight time, including your neighbors of Nevada, Idaho, California. I want to point out that California in 2018 voted for either permanent clock to be determined by the legislature, and their legislature has yet to determine that. But I believe just yesterday they passed a resolution favoring permanent standard time, so they appear to be moving in the same direction as these two bills. And again, permanent standard time is federally pre-approved. So in closing, I would say please support both or either of these bills. They can ditch the switch, lock the clock as most voters wish. They can do so in the quickest way, the safest way, the most healthful way, and the most lasting way. You can save lives and save money easily by passing these bills. I'd be glad to answer any questions you might have, and thank you to the sponsors for bringing these forward. Thank you, committee members, for this hearing.
Thank you. Questions for Mr. P? Yeah, Senator?
Jay, what is you have your finger on the pulse of this topic, obviously. Where's the wind blowing in Washington, D.C. right now? It used to be like the Sunshine Act and going towards permanent daylight saving time. What is that? Has that changed?
Well, yes, I'm actually in D.C. right now advocating for this issue. I was talking to many members of Congress today. There's a lot of interest in ending the clock change, and most people are neutral on which way to go. And they're very interested to see that the history and the science agree that standard time is the most lasting and safe way to do so. Now, in December, President-elect Trump, now President Trump, posted to social media saying, eliminate DST. It's costly and inefficient. It has a support from a strong but small group, and it shouldn't have that support. So we're glad to see the president voicing support for permanent standard time as well. So there's talk of hearings coming, but Congress moves slowly. It's really hard to predict what will happen here in D.C.
Further questions, comments?
Other than that's why I have both options in here.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
So now going to the top of the list, we have, was it Rishab? I think that you came in. Is he still there? Patil?
Yes, I'm here.
Could you please state your name for the record and begin your testimony?
Yes, hi. My name is Rishab Patil, and I am the leader of the Save Daylight Saving Time Coalition, where we are working to support the Sunshine Protection Act and stop and prevent permanent standard time and defeating bills to make standard time permanent. Last year, we thought we were going to lose, but we successfully defeated bills to make standard time permanent. Just recently, Washington's bill to make standard time permanent died in committee. So you may have recognized me from last year. My speech was terrible, so this time I'll make it better. So anyway, Oregon beaches, Oregon beaches and the coast don't usually get warm, or they rarely get warm. And if the sun sets at 8 p.m. instead of 9 p.m., it'll be cold in the evening, and Oregonians wouldn't like that. I am here to urge you to oppose both SB 566 and SB 1038. This bill will make Portland 2 hours behind the mountain time zone of Oregon if Washington and California do the same. Senator Thatcher, if these bills fail in the floor chamber, please do not reschedule it for another hearing. Our experts Laura Prug and Steve Callinger and more, who have warned about the consequences of permanent standard time. Permanent standard time would increase the increased deer vehicle collisions by 73,600 with 66 more human deaths and 4,140 more injuries. It would also add $2.39 billion in costs a year. Conversely, permanent DST, daylight saving time, has purposes. Don't get rid of daylight saving time. And as JP mentions, glad you're here to testify. Welcome. So get up earlier if you want more sun in the evening. That's a slanted argument. Just because Arizona observes permanent standard time doesn't mean you should force it on other 48 states, especially states that are east and aligned in a time zone. Mexico and Arizona, just because they observe permanent standard time doesn't mean is not a good justification for permanent standard time. Please let the government decide on observing permanent standard time. The medical organizations have been spreading pseudoscience. I'm not saying they're always spreading pseudoscience. I'm just saying that there's been spreading some pseudoscience saying that permanent standard time is going to be beneficial for everyone, because not everyone has the same circadian rhythms. People don't wake up with the sun and go to sleep with the sun. You can fix your own health yourself by sleeping early and sleeping early on holidays, getting up later on holidays, eating healthy, and exercising more. So today, there are many things that are causing harm to public health, like guns, drugs, fentanyl crisis, racism, climate change, unhealthy food, cancer, diabetes, not daylight saving time. Changing the clocks twice a year isn't as bad as a list of the threats to public health. Please keep our clock change and simply be patient for Congress to allow a switch to permanent daylight saving time. There is nothing special about standard time. Standard time is man-made. It is not natural time. Changing clocks balances daylight, and it makes it fair for people who want standard and daylight saving. Please stop whining about changing clocks twice a year and just focus on what would really help Oregon. Just trying to be nice, no offense. So the president does not support permanent standard time. He never indicated support for permanent standard time. He just said that he wants to eliminate DST, and it's costly to our nation. So that's all the time I have. That's all I have to say. Thank you for allowing me to testify.
Okay. Senator Brock-Smith.
Thank you. Rashid, thank you for your testimony. Where are you located in Oregon?
No, I'm testifying from California.
Oh, I'm sorry. When's the last time you've been to an Oregon beach?
Oh, well, I've never been to Oregon Beach, but I've been to California Beach, where it is cold. So we went when I was at the San Francisco beaches. There are beaches there. It was really cold in the. It felt freezing in the summer evenings. So I'm pretty sure it would be much colder for Oregon beaches too. So that's why I had a feeling that Oregon's beaches would also be be more colder than San Francisco.
Thank you. As the vice chair of the Oregon Legislative Coastal Caucus and an individual that represents the Southern Oregon Coastal Beach, our beaches are quite warm. So I don't know what's going on in California. And then lastly, you mentioned 73,000 collisions if this were to move forward with deer. Is that also a California statistic?
Yes, it is.
Okay. So since we're talking about Oregon, and although I appreciate your advocacy from California, I would just remind you that whenever we're giving testimony in legislative committees, that they try to be factual for Oregon. As I'll say, 73,000 is not for, as you admitted, is not for Oregon. It's for California, and I'm here to tell you, beaches are warm on the coast.
Well, it's for wildlife. Oregon has wildlife, and if standard time is made permanent, it would make more collisions and with deer, because Oregon is filled with forest. So,
Thank you, sir, for your testimony. Next up, we have Bill Griesar?
Sorry, Griesar.
Griesar, I apologize, sir.
No
Please.
worries, not at all. Yeah.
Yes,
Of course. Thank you. And thank you very much for welcoming me. Let me find this here. So thank you, Chairman Manning and members of the committee. My name is Bill Griesar. I'm an assistant professor of neuroscience at Portland State University. I also co-founded a volunteer nonprofit organization called Northwest Noggin. And through Noggin, we regularly visit K-12 classrooms, correctional facilities, houseless youth organizations, and urban and rural communities to learn what people already know about their brains and what they really want to explore further. And one topic that comes up again and again across the state is the critical importance of sleep. You know, sleep is actually essential for brain health, and it will be, as JP mentioned, you know, severely disrupted next week when we leave the healthier standard time and we spring ahead to daylight savings.
Excuse me, Professor, could you move your camera a little bit more? There you go, because all we see is the artwork behind you.
Oh, I can try to move forward. Does this help? I'm just in a kind of an awkward spot.
To your right.
Does that work?
There you go. Okay.
Okay, sorry about that, you guys. All right, so during good sleep, like deep sleep, the kind of restorative sleep that we all crave, the fluid that actually surrounds our brain, which is called cerebrospinal fluid, it actually literally gets an opportunity to flush through the noggin, you know, literally clearing it out. And so our ability to sleep well, as we know from both research and experience, is profoundly impacted by light. Permanent standard time is best aligned with the natural circadian rhythms of our own brains and bodies, and it allows us to wake up more days of the year in sunlight by far. You know, and I noted today, or like last night actually, it was still light after 6 p.m. here in Astoria, Oregon. So we're already moving, you know, to a wonderful place where we wake with the light and we have plenty of light in the evening. It's only going to get more and more. Teenagers forced to rise in darkness are sleep deprived, with serious consequences for brain development and mental health. Every major neurodegenerative disorder, including Parkinson's and Alzheimer's disease, is preceded by about a decade of poor sleep. Daylight savings, and again, no daylight is ever saved. It's the same amount, was already tried as was mentioned in this committee, in this country during the energy crisis of the 1970s, and it was rapidly repealed, you know, after children actually died waiting for buses in darkness, and people really did not like, you know, that permanent daylight savings where we were waking up in the dark. So permanent standard time is the policy supported by all the sleep research and medical organizations in the country, including the American Medical Association, the Sleep Research Society, the American Academy of Neurology, the American Academy of Sleep Medicine, and more. Adoption of permanent standard time will definitely make Oregon a healthier state for all. And if you're curious about all the research that relates to this, we cited it and organized it and made it available in a post, and I submitted that with testimony. It's on our website, nwnoggin.org.
Thank you for your testimony. Questions, comments from the committee? Senator Thatcher.
Previous testimony was mentioning circadian rhythms and that we all have different circadian rhythms, but doesn't light naturally, I mean, per humans, isn't morning light important? I mean, I guess we all have different schedules, but the morning light is very important, as I understand.
Yeah.
Can you comment on that?
Absolutely. So we actually run on what they call a circadian sleep-wake cycle. It's about 25 hours. So that light in the morning is essential for sort of resetting us to the 24-hour cycle. So it's, that's why we, in the Northwest, there is something called seasonal affective disorder. And one of the most important treatments is to actually provide some sort of a light box. You get early morning light, to try to address and reset our clocks daily. So yeah, circadian cycling is pretty critical, and light is what helps us to really, set it on the right path.
Okay. Thank you. We are running close to time, so I'm going to have to put everybody on a 3-minute. Next one up is Samuel Alden. Sam, are you there?
Yes, I am. Can you see me?
Yes. Please, for the record, state your name and begin your testimony. You have 3 minutes.
Amazing. Thank you, Chairman Manning and members of the committee. My name is Sam Mutschler-Aldine. I'm testifying for SB 566 and 1038. I'm studying psychology and neuroscience at Portland State University. I wanted to share my perspective on why we should support permanent standard time. Let me begin with presenting some research that supports the majority voter opinion favoring permanent standard time. A study from 2023 showed increased suicide risk by 100% in adolescents and young adults, even higher rates for minoritized communities. Here's an important excerpt of that study. In the United States, suicide is the 10th leading cause of death across the lifespan and the second leading cause of death among youth. Adjusting for race, ethnicity, sexual identity, age, sex, substance use, trauma, and bullying, those with short sleep had approximately twice the odds of suicide ideation consideration compared to those with long sleep. Here's another one from August. Sleep duration significantly predicts suicide risk among all adolescents. So some background here, your body starts to make you feel fatigued when it gets dark out, right? Your brain recognizes the lack of light and produces melatonin, which helps you sleep. And when it's light out, it essentially does the opposite and helps you wake up. So when it's light out too late and dark out too early, people have a harder time falling asleep and a harder time waking up, which means that they get less sleep than they should. This is especially consequential for adolescents whose brains naturally begin producing melatonin later than adults. Even adolescents that try to go to bed with enough time to get 7 to 9 hours of sleep, they might not be able to without permanent standard time. As many of you can relate to, I spent middle and high school with chronic sleep loss, finishing my homework late at night and waking up early for classes. I would have so much trouble waking up in the darkness to go to math or extracurricular activities that I would set alarms back to back to back that would be snoozed until I would get up, or more likely until my family members would yell for me to turn them off. I wish I had permanent standard time in grade school, especially so that I would have been able to go to sleep easier, wake up easier, and be more successful with less health complications. It's really bad for people of all ages, and especially for kids, to get poor sleep. It's been shown time and time again to predict cancer, dementia, and as I've gone over in detail, suicide. It has even been shown that improving sleep in children reduces the prevalence of certain diagnoses given, like ADHD. So sleep has this unique capability to help people succeed in so many aspects and to protect people from harm. So using permanent standard time, as most voters support, does not change anything about the natural world. It's simply a healthier way for us to arrange our clocks. You can do everything that you did in daylight savings using the natural light patterns throughout seasons that existed long before clock changes began, but the only way to prevent the long-lasting damage being done to your children and to your community is by supporting permanent standard time. That's all.
Thank you. Next up, we have Nathaniel Suter. Mr. Suter? It's not on. Okay, we'll do a flashback. Francis Delaney.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, please state your name. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. I'm not sure of all the correct things to say, so thank you for having me. My name is Francis Delaney. I'm based in Portland. And this is not going to be very smooth because I was just trying to type up my notes just now. So I'm a huge fan of daylight savings time, so I'm very opposed to moving to standard time. And I want to emphasize something that gets overlooked a lot, that permanent standard time itself would disrupt sleep greatly. In the summer, we would end up with nearly 100 days where the sunrise would be coming up before 5 a.m. And for those of us who have not had air conditioning, I'm sure many of you have run into this, where at night you have your windows open, your curtains open. When you talk about the sunrise coming up at 4:30, that also means birds are coming on at like 3:45. So I'm really talking about a huge sleep disruption, actually, when you think about standard time. I understand that both have disruptions, but I think that having those extra days in the summer is much more disruptive. The other thing is that on standard time in the winter, I know a lot of these arguments are actually against moving to daylight savings time permanently, which is not what's being discussed right now. But most of us are, in fact, getting up in the dark anyway in the winter. So I did want to highlight that. In the winter, we are driving home in the dark right now. So that's a big issue with standard time permanently. I know that we mention a lot the fact that we have these beautiful, beautiful long evenings in the summer, which is true, and actually what I primarily care about. But the morning activities are also impacted if we move to standard time. My husband is a surfer, and he drives to the coast. In order to get there for sunrise, he would need to leave Portland at about 3 a.m. During the summer. And then, a daylight saving time is actually what is most normal for us. We're on it 8 months of the year. So there are a lot of comments about how we never adjusted daylight savings time. I don't really understand that. I don't study this, so that's fair. But if we're actually on that time 8 months of the year, it makes much more sense to me that moving to standard time is extremely disruptive, especially if we move to it permanently. That would be more of a change from our current normal than staying on daylight savings time. I think that's most of it. None of us like changing the clocks. Obviously, that's very disruptive. Personally, I would drastically prefer to change my clocks forever than to get rid of daylight savings time. And most people, when I mention to them the idea of getting rid of daylight savings times at first, they say, oh, that's great, because they're thinking about the clocks change. And when I actually tell them that's actually staying on the winter time frame, they're extremely opposed. So I think that's all I have. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for your testimony. Next, we have Iain MacKenzie.
Good afternoon. My name is Iain MacKenzie, and I'm here to oppose SB 566. I'm asking you to oppose it too, to save my marriage. That may sound a little melodramatic, but I'll explain. One of the glorious things about Oregon summers is having a few hours of sunlight after the working day where we can take part in outdoor activities. Moving to permanent standard time would rob us of an hour of sun in the evening, which we could otherwise be spending playing golf, cycling, walking the beaches of the Oregon coast, which I do want to point out are lovely and warm in the evening, eating out at our world-class restaurants and breweries, or hopefully in the future, watching a Major League Baseball game. Instead, we would have sunrises as early as 4:20 in the morning, a time when most Oregonians are sleeping. I'm a 6th generation Oregonian, but as you may be able to tell from my accent, I grew up in Scotland. And as somebody who grew up in a more northerly climate, Oregon's winters don't bother me. They do have a huge effect on my husband, who is from Mexico. Winters here are hard on him, and he is far from the only person who has told me this. And the people I hear it from are overwhelmingly people of color. For him and others, it's our summers that make our winters bearable. And while it's true that most of Mexico now uses standard time, it's worth noting that that Mexico is much closer to the equator than we are, and therefore experience much less seasonal variation in the hours of daylight that they experience year-round. If we didn't have sunlight, the sunlight that we do have during the winter evenings, during the summer evenings, it would be a huge strain on our relationship. And while I don't want to leave Oregon, I certainly don't want to leave my marriage. And it would have to be one or the other, most likely. So I urge you, please consider the negative effects this bill would have. Thank you.
Thank you. One more time, we have, who was that? Suter? Nathaniel Suter?
No.
Not here. With that was the end of our testimony on Senate Bills 566 and Senate Bill 1038. And with that, I am closing public testimony on Senate Bill 566 and 1038. That is the work that we have for today. So, Mr. Rancic, what do we have looking forward for Thursday?
Chair Manning, on Thursday the 6th, we have a work session on...
Wait, we closed it.
Who do we have?
Hello? Oh, this is Nathan Suter. I'm so sorry. I was trying to unmute for testimony on 566. I apologize.
All right, hold on, sir. Let me open it up one more time. Open up public
Thank you so much.
Testimony on Senate Bill 566. And please state your name and begin your testimony.
Hi, my name is Nathan Suter, and I really appreciate just a minute of your time. I appreciate Senator Manning and Thatcher's efforts on this. I live down here in Ashland. I grew up in Salem, about 3 blocks from the Capitol. I went to Parish Middle School and North Salem High School, and I'm actually urging you to vote no and reject permanent standard time. Really quickly, I'd like to mention that in the 80s, Parish Middle School started at 7:40 a.m., and now it starts at 9:20 a.m. But I spent my entire career and have spent my entire career in health and health promotion as a public school teacher, a coach, a small college professor, and I currently run an organization focused on social connection, physical activity, and promotion of locally owned businesses. And I have seen firsthand throughout my entire career just how precious daylight hours are between 5:30 p.m. and 8:45 p.m. after work for working families, for their health and happiness of professionals in our communities. In my professional training, we learned about the concept of whole health. And I think there's an unfortunate narrative that's developed that standard time is somehow the healthy time, and daylight savings time is somehow the time that everybody wants and enjoys, but shouldn't necessarily get the most health benefits from. The concept of whole health is physical, mental, social, community, and economic health. And while I totally understand the desire to ditch the switch and recognize that for some individuals, standard time may improve sleep, it's the overall impact on the whole health of individuals and communities that would be devastating if we move to permanent standard time. And I don't want to take too much of your time, but I just want to, on a personal note, I did a little math, and it's not an arbitrary choice between the two standards, like, gosh, let's just go with one or the other, but stop and ditch the switch. My wife and I, we just had our third child who just turned 1 year old, and I did a little math. And if we move to permanent standard time, we would remove 4,200 hours of daylight after school and work time from his 18 years of childhood, and we would place that hour between 4:30 a.m. and 6:30 a.m. And I think that when we examine that, what can seem like a small change, but why people are so passionate about preserving that most precious hour in the evening after work and school, is that is where social connection happens. That is where outdoor physical activities happen, and both between families, working families, between community members and our local businesses. So I can confidently say that Oregon as a whole would not be healthier under permanent standard time, and I urge you to vote no, and I appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Senator Thatcher has a question.
And I apologize to the chair because this is sort of a question relating to the other bill,
Yeah.
but are you wanting to maintain the switch, or are you preferring a daylight saving time permanent?
Well, I think that I have preferred permanent daylight savings time only because I think that we have slowly, as a society, and in Oregon, using my example of Parish Middle School, used to start at 7:40 a.m. and now starts at 9:20 a.m. We've adjusted to permanent daylight savings time that in a way that we haven't in 1974, for example, or we haven't in Arizona and Hawaii, which are, of course, much closer to the equator than our wonderful, but sometimes dark and gloomy Oregon. And so I think that permanent daylight time would be desirable. However, I think that a secondary choice, which I think is also actually reflected, despite what I know we hear from our constituents, I'm sure, that the compromise that we currently have, while unfortunate, actually does give us the best of both options after a small adjustment. So I would rank them permanent daylight time, keep the compromise, and then lastly, permanent standard time.
Thank you. With that, I am closing again the public hearing on Senate Bill 566.